everyone. Good morning. Does everybody have their coffee? Vince, do you have your coffee?
I already had coffee, so I'm drinking some water right now.
Oh, you're so responsible. This is pretty much my third coffee. So that's,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, I'll have a couple more throughout the day. I've just
Okay,
finished my
good.
first cup, so.
Okay, good. I feel better. Well, everybody, thanks for joining. Good morning. I'm so excited for my guest this morning, Vince Velasquez. He's a former or retired Atlanta police detective. He's the director of security for the Atlanta Hawks. And his new show just premiered last week, Deadly Case Files on One TV. Vince, man, I'm so happy to see you, even though it's virtual. I wish I could see you in person more, but you know.
Yeah, no, glad to be on with you. But I mean, come on, virtual is what we do now. It's just so easy. So
Yeah, no, that's so true. But I want to say, I want to tell everybody, because you'll like this. Well, first, Vince and I met at CrimeCon, and Cheryl McCollum introduced us. She's so good at just making everybody be friends. And I had seen, oh, hi, Marshall. Nice to see you guys. Sorry, I'm popping in. Oh, thanks, Tommy. He is a great guest. Tommy said I get the best guest. That's awesome.
oh, hey, Tommy.
But yeah. So Mac introduced us, and I had seen Vince do a breakout session, and I was like kind of starstruck. I was such a loser, and I wanted a picture with Vince. So we get to go in this picture, and since I don't know him, I was like, "Can I touch you?" He's like, "Yeah, you can touch me."
Oh yeah, I was like, this is odd. Okay.
Dude, you don't know anymore. Like, what? You don't know. People are probably like, I don't want to be like, I don't know. People are still scared of
Well,
COVID.
the
I don't
fact that
know.
you were with Mac, Cheryl McCullum, I knew you were cool because if you're a friend of Mac, you're a friend of mine. So
Oh, okay. So I'd be creepy if I wasn't with Mac. I just have
that
that
would that
creeper
would have
vibe.
been, yeah. If you just walked up to me out of the blue and said, "Can I touch you and take a picture?" I'd have been like, no, I think we're good.
Okay, fine. You know what? That's totally fair. And yes, Dizzy, we all love Mac. And yes, I am a flipping weirdo. And thank you so much, Gretchen. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yes, help me build this channel. My gosh. Okay. And then one other thing about Vince that I just think is so funny that happened. So during the NBA draft, because I mentioned Vince is the head of security for the Hawks, we met up, and we're all hanging out at this cigar bar, and this guy comes up to Vince. And guys, I know nothing about sports, like sports ball, yay. So this guy comes to Vince, and I was like, oh, I was like, are you a fan? Vince is like, that's Tim Hardaway. And I was like,
A
oh,
fan of what? Not certainly not me. That was funny.
no, I thought he was a fan of you because you're recognizable, especially in this community. And I was just like, and then I found out, I was like, oh my gosh, I texted my dad and my brother, and they're like, you moron. They're like, you didn't know who Tim Hardaway was? And I was like, oh, I better get a picture. So
Yeah.
anyway, you were very kind. You were kind of like, yeah, I know her. I don't really know her. I mean, I met her once, but no, I'm just kidding.
You guys hit it
Yeah.
off. You guys
Yeah.
hit it off.
So, Vince, I want to get this out of the way because I do find this interesting, but Vince cannot talk about this. But Vince was a witness in the YSL trial. He was on the stand back in February. That's the Young Slime life. I mean, that trial is bonkers. And I'm sorry, it makes me laugh from time to time, but you can't talk about it. So that stinks until it's over, right?
Unfortunately, I'm still considered a witness, so I'm not allowed
Yeah.
to speak on that.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. That's fine. So, Vince, you're based in Atlanta. You are retired. And when I first met you, oh, wait, what do you know him from, Tommy? What? I'm like, oh, YSL. Sorry. Okay. I'm like,
Oh, I thought
yeah.
he was going to say I owe him money. Tommy, if I owe you money, I'm sorry. Just send me the cash app. I'll send it to you.
Yeah. Right. No, he's very honorable. So, but no, so you're retired, you're doing these shows. And I had asked you when I met you, do you think New York City is worse than Fulton County? Do you think Rikers is worse? And you said you think Rikers is worse.
Yeah, I've been to both jails,
Yeah.
and I just think that the volume of inmates that go through Rikers. Obviously, New York City is a lot bigger than Atlanta, so
Yeah.
just statistically speaking, you're gonna have more people going through.
Mm.
It just the feeling I got now. Fulton County Jail is no holiday. It's no walk in the park. Let me tell you that. And they had their set of problems, but just the feeling I got being in both jails, uh,
Mhm.
it's a stark difference. Rikers is like if you want to do a scared straight program, and I think that even started in New York City back in the '70s, where they
Yeah.
take these juveniles into the jails and
Mhm.
have inmates scare the crap out of them. Uh, Rikers is the place to go because even me, as a trained law enforcement, going there to interview an inmate, related to a case in Atlanta, it just felt like I felt this heavy weight.
Yeah.
So that's my interpretation of the two in comparison.
Okay. I mean, and now Rikers, it's so, I have a friend who's an investigator there. It's so overcrowded. They're like jamming like four people into it's nasty. It's so
Yeah,
gross. But I feel like there might be a bit more violence. I feel like I might have read that there might be more violence in Fulton County. But I could be wrong. But yeah, Rikers supposedly is like the worst place on earth. I mean, the worst.
yeah.
So yeah, I can't imagine.
And a fun fact, like, I've talked to, I can't even tell you the amount of suspects or inmates that I've interviewed in my career. There's something that's prevailing with every inmate I've ever talked to is they want to get out of county jail. And I suspect it's the same with Rikers.
Yeah.
County jails are notoriously worse than prisons. So, because it's like a revolving door, and they cram everybody in. Everybody's waiting for trial, and then prison is more of a structured environment. You know
Mm,
what you got going on. You know when chow is. You know when you have visitation,
yeah.
and you can start to fall into a cadence.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, county jails are sometimes way worse than state prisons.
Gosh. I mean, so I want to,
Yeah.
and guys, pop these questions in for Vince. So Taryn says, Vince, have you ever been to Angola?
I have never been to Angola, and that's in Louisiana. I have been to some county jails
Yeah.
but I've seen the specials on Angola, the Netflix or
Yeah.
the docu-series, and it's Jesus Christ. Like, I know why you're asking that question. I mean, Angola has a history, hard labor. I mean, inmates dying from heat exhaustion.
Right.
Um, and that's probably a whole nother podcast to talk about conditions of prison.
Totally.
Um,
Totally.
and again, like, it's not supposed to be a holiday, but also, you got to treat people humanely. You got to be able to incarcerate people, try to rehabilitate them, but also give them the basic necessities to live and not feel like you're an animal, so to speak.
That's such a good point. And you're so right. I mean, I'm sure there's a podcast out there, but a lot of people don't like the topic of prison reform or reforming prisoners to, have a better life and actually contribute to society, which, it's interesting. But Gretchen wants to know if Rikers is worse than Sing Sing.
I don't know. I've never been to Sing Sing. I've heard of it. Rikers is the only jail I've been to in New York City, to be honest with you. I've
Right.
been to prisons. I don't even think I've been to any prisons in New York State, but I've traveled around the country because obviously, if you work homicide in any major city, your
Yeah.
suspects or witnesses, if a year goes by or if it's a cold case, some of these
Yeah.
people are in prison in other states, and you have to go there and visit them. I've never had the opportunity to be in a state prison in New York City or New York State, so I really don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. Cheryl McCollum also told me that when she was in New York, so like Rikers is actually kind of tough to get to. It actually is an island, but
Yeah.
she said she drove there with her husband or something, and she tried to get out and take a picture like in front of the
Oh.
sign, and the guy's like, what are you doing? You have to go. And she's like, I'm sorry, like in her accent. And
Yeah, she's such a sweetheart. Her husband Walt, and Walt is such a cool guy too.
oh my gosh, totally. They're
Yeah,
like, they really are
yeah.
the coolest people.
Like they
Totally.
need their own show. Like those two together are hilarious. I swear.
No, you're so right. They do need their
Yeah,
own show. You're so right. Well, I
yeah.
want to ask you because Deadly Case Files, it just premiered last week. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. So, what do we have to look forward to on this season? I mean, you and your partner, David Quinn, you guys are so funny together. You've got the best rapport. And yeah, you guys are just like meant to be. It's
Oh yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. We like we always talk about like and I'm not sure how other departments do it. They assign partners. We just met
Yeah.
up and we're like, hey, let's be partners.
Hmm.
Let's grab a cup of coffee. Okay. And we were just meant to be. Like the homicide universe put us together, and our personalities are so different that we complement each other.
Yeah.
He could be so excitable and like off left field on something, and I'm like, hey man, calm down, relax. Let's just take this other. Let's just take a breath here. But it works. We have such a good synergy. This show, Deadly Case Files, is unique, and we're so proud of it because what we get to do in this show, our other show, ATL Homicide, we highlighted our work.
Hmm.
David Quinn and I's cases that we did for, collectively 20 plus years,
Yeah.
hundreds of homicides. This show, Deadly Case Files, we get to now showcase all the great detectives nationwide. So every episode is a case of another detective that they solved, and we take the viewers as hosts through all of the things that we took them through in our cases. How
Yes.
that detective showed up on scene and the evidence they had to look at. We just highlighted a detective, Tracy Lewis, that David Quinn and I trained in Atlanta, and she turned out to be a phenomenal detective and brilliant, brilliant woman.
Yeah.
So we get to cheerlead them and show our viewers and fans of the show that there's other detectives that are just like us or even better than us.
Yeah.
And it's really not about us, it's about them.
Mhm.
And it's about all the great work that these detectives do nationwide.
And I got a chance to watch the video of Tracy, who you just spoke about, and she seemed amazing. And you said, didn't you? She was just like, I don't even know what you said. Like she was an intern or something. I don't even know if you have interns, but when she first started, and all of a sudden she's out on her own working these cases, and you guys just felt like super proud of her.
Yeah, she just started as a rookie cop, then became a detective
Rookie.
homicide. And like
Okay.
any other detective, we'll take
Yeah.
them under our wing. And there's some detectives that, we take under our wing and we just don't feel they got it, and we're not gonna spend a lot of time with them. But the ones that really, kind of shine through the darkness and we see
Yeah.
that they have the ability, we
Hmm.
really try to hone their skills. So my partner David Quinn put it, eloquently. It's like the training wheels came off and Tracy Lewis just rode that bike out
Yes.
and speeding down the road and making waves and really making a difference in Atlanta.
Yeah, no, seriously. And people are saying, yay, a fresh new show. You've been bored and you've seen most show. And I kind of feel the same way about something. I'm like, I just finished the whatever. It was New York Homicide. Now they changed to LA. But is Deadly Case Files, do you have to wait week to week or can we stream the whole season?
It's week to week for the new
Okay.
episodes. The past episodes you can stream on the TV One app. And then also you can go to, if you have smart TV, Roku,
Yeah.
or Philo, you can actually watch past episodes
Oh,
after they
cool.
air.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And hi, Dark Side. Okay. So I'm getting requests, Vince. People would like to know your thoughts on the police in Massachusetts, specifically for this one, Karen Reed. They want to know your thoughts on, and you and I discussed this just a bit in person off the record, but Mass State Police, they're under a lot of scrutiny right now. There's a lot of these guys that are on leave or paid leave, suspension. I mean, you've got an investigation from the start that appeared to be heavily flawed, and then you've got a lead investigator that appeared to be a piece of shit on the stand, excuse my language. So
Right.
what did you make of all that? And it's almost like it just must be really disheartening for law enforcement and investigators like you who have always done the right thing and are honorable.
So I got a few comments on this. So first of
Mhm.
all, the meal is only as good as the chef that prepares it. So
Mhm.
if you got a shitty chef, you're gonna have a shitty meal. So
Yep.
in this case, you have a police department, a lead detective that made a lot of mistakes. Now, here's something that people should consider. I didn't follow this trial as exclusively as you did. I've been following you, and I know you did a lot of reporting on this. So you know this case way more than in and out than I do. But I will tell you this isn't the first case that this lead detective botched. This isn't the first investigation that that department mishandled. This is one of the first cases that was such a high profile case
Yep.
that we got to see that shoddy work.
Yeah.
So this didn't happen overnight. Like that's a pattern of behavior, a pattern of, I guess you could say misinvestigation
Yes.
shoddy investigation that probably permeated from, culturally throughout that department for years,
So
right?
right.
So we just got to see it. And
Mm,
people, a good defense attorney is going to tune in. And that's why, I mean, literally crossing your T's and dotting your I's are so important. I remember when I first started in homicide, and I couldn't understand this until later. You got to imagine too, a thorough homicide investigation that
yeah.
a case like Karen Reed, you're probably thousands of pages that this detective had to type up. There are going to be a typo here and there. And I recall my first year in homicide submitting my final report to a supervisor, and she kicked it back because I literally forgot to cross a T. Like it
Like
was
literally.
literally like because I submitted my notes, and it was like it wasn't a capital T. It should have been a capital T. And I said, really? And she says, let me tell you something. If you do the best job in the world and that's the only thing they're going to find, they're going to make such a big deal about you writing a small t when it should have been a capital T because that's all they got. So don't even give them that. And I said, that made so much sense.
So much
So,
sense.
so when you think about all the things that happened in the Karen Reed case that were brought to light in trial and these text messages from the
Mm,
lead detective and like this inappropriate behavior, that
mhm,
didn't just happen with that case. That's a
mhm.
pattern of behavior that's been going on, and we just got to see it. And unfortunately, that can move a case for a mistrial, as we see in this case. Now the DA or the state's attorney has to make a decision like, how do we do this again? We got to get a new jury. Do we get a new jury? Do we offer a plea? All these things will come into play now because do they want to go through this again? Because, God, how long did that trial take? And how much effort and money was spent prosecuting that case?
You're absolutely right. You're so right. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden this behavior is just turned on for the Karen Reed case. Before I continue commenting, I just want to say welcome, MJ. I'm so happy you're a member. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. But yeah, and something I'd been talking about is the fact that Trooper Proctor also investigated the Anna Walsh case, and in my opinion, Brian Walsh, I think they have a lot of evidence to support the fact that he did it, in my opinion. So the fact is, as soon as this information came out about Proctor, Brian Walsh's attorney filed a motion to get everything opened up. Let's look into this. Let's look into that. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a domino effect with all of his cases. That's insane, and that is horrible. If his his behavior is going to help people like Brian Walsh, I mean, that's just unacceptable. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And yeah, MJ, I agree. Don't make us endure 2 more months of Lally. Man, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but you're so right. How do you do this again with the lead investigator being suspended and 3 other officers in the case being investigated by internal affairs? I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about this, and even if they move the venue somewhere else, they get a new jury. A defense attorney gets to introduce all this improper
Yes,
behavior. Like
I know.
any detective or police officer's personnel file, their internal affairs file is public record. Like anyone could look that up. And if there's something in there that's directly related to I guess, your character as a witness, that's presentable to a jury. A jury can hear that. They can bring that up. So it's going to be difficult to try this. I suspect at some point they're going to offer a very reduced plea. She may
Mhm.
take it just to avoid prison time whatsoever, and just put this behind her.
Yeah.
Not even admitting guilt to murder, but maybe admitting guilt to something else, a lesser crime. Time served when she got arrested, and that's it. Everybody go home.
I don't think she spent any time in jail. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain she didn't spend any time there. And I don't know if you paid attention at all to the Ashley Benefield trial. They came back with a verdict last night. She was the woman who shot her husband.
Yes.
Yeah. So and this is another one where it's like I sometimes I can't tell, like, with myself, for example. Like, I feel like I'm open-minded. I really always want to give women the benefit of the doubt, which is why I feel like sometimes I go into these trials and I'm like,
Mm.
oh, I don't want to believe that you know what I
Oh,
mean? Like, I
yeah.
know, I
I've
know.
seen some evil women though. Oh, and they're good. They're good. They're good at hiding it and the tears and it's like, wait a minute, hold up. I mean, I've had a murder for hire case where a woman paid to have her husband murdered, and gosh, she was cool as a cucumber, crying, real tears. Because fake tears, you don't. When you really, really cry, the mucous membranes in your nose, you have to blow your nose. So if
Yeah.
you're not blowing your nose when you're crying, those are fake tears, crocodile. This woman had it all. So I understand what you're saying, but I've
Wait, she had
seen.
the real tears, like this.
Oh, she was she good at like an Academy Award
Oh,
performance, and she's doing life in prison right now. But to your point, yeah, it's just
yeah,
not normal when we see that. We usually see the husband killing the wife, the
yeah.
boyfriend, Gabby Patino, all these other
Mhm.
cases out there. And it's usually because men typically are more aggressive towards those relationships. But
Yeah.
it is odd to see this though.
Yeah, and something and I like it's so hard to I shouldn't say it's hard because like human behavior is it's different for everybody. You don't know how you're going to act in certain situations until you're in them. However, I will say this, I went back and forth about Ashley Benefield a lot. I went back and forth a lot. And I I came to the conclusion that I do believe that she was abused and that she was traumatized in some way. However, I felt very odd when she was emotional the whole time during the trial. And then all of a sudden they're reading the verdict and she is cool as hell. And she's just like, no emotion. And I was like, oh my, I was almost freaked out. I had to go back and watch it because she just kind of looks like this way, that, and I'm like, I don't think we got played, but did we get played? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
understand. She could be facing 30 years. 30 years and she's just like, I mean, I guess they have a plan to appeal or something, but I felt strange. I felt very strange.
Yeah.
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 So,
Trust those instincts. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think so. I feel like I need some work on that with just because I feel like I do have a really big heart and I've talked about this before. I've been known to just be overly nice to someone, they take advantage, and then the next thing you know, I have to be an asshole and I hate that feeling. So,
Yeah.
oh wait, this is so interesting, Gretchen. The murder for Dahlia DiPolito. This is so random. This was out of Florida, but she hired someone to kill her husband, Mike DiPolito, who I used to work with, which is so
What?
weird. I used to
Wow.
be in internet marketing. I've had like 18 lives. So I was like 23 and he was a client. It's called lead generation advertising. Actually, my husband is still in that field, but her husband had this really sketchy company called Mad Media. So we called him Mad Mike. Isn't that so crazy? No, I don't, she wasn't an escort. I don't know. This case happened a long time ago. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, there was like a dateline on it. There was a bunch of stuff. But Vince, you actually have a really good episode of Dateline, I believe, which is Justice for Sparkle. Have you guys seen that in the chat?
Yeah.
I'll wait for that. Tell us about Justice for Sparkle.
So that's a case, sadly, where Sparkle Rye, a young African American woman, goes to work at a hotel in Louisville, Kentucky, for an Indian family. She falls in love with the son of the family, an adult son.
Okay.
And then in that culture, those marriages in that family in particular are arranged.
Yeah.
So they basically elope, they leave, and they end up moving away to Fulton County here. And then the husband of that victim never told his family that they got married. They ended up having a child. They kept the child from the family. The birth of the child, no one knew about it. And finally, the father, Sparkle Rye's now husband, his father, her father-in-law, Chimon Rye, gets wind of this marriage
And the
where
baby.
his son was and a baby, where
Yeah.
his son was supposed to be, marrying another Indian woman in an arranged marriage,
Yeah.
and he hires a killer from Jackson, Mississippi, because he's now living in Jackson. And the killer then subcontracts that killing to another person, and then the killers actually come to Atlanta. And while Sparkle Rye was attending to her baby in the apartment by herself, the baby sleeping, they break in and they strangle her to death with a vacuum cleaner cord. So we had to reopen that as a cold case, and we actually had to travel to Louisville, Kentucky, and Jackson, Mississippi, And interesting
Oh,
story, we were staying at the Hilton in Jackson, and myself and my partner at the time, AB Calhoun, we were in Jackson, Mississippi so many times at the same hotel so many times interviewing these shady characters
yeah.
in the lobby of the Hilton, that when this case broke and hit the news and we had to go back to the hotel just to like tidy up some things in the city, the
Yeah.
hotel staff was like, "We thought you guys were drug dealers because we saw you so often. You're in the hotel and you got people coming in with this looking like, like they're drug dealers, and you guys,
Yes.
we're dressed down, we're like in jeans, and so finally we had, it made major news, but we were able to successfully convict the father uh, of a murder for hire. We actually sent one of the contract killers that he subcontracted to in the hotel, wired up undercover with a camera attached to his button in his shirt, and got the defendant, the father of the man
Yeah.
that Swarkle was married to admit that he paid him to have this murder done.
So he did admit it.
He
That's
admitted it on camera, and it was one of those. It was like it was you know the bam moment when we're sitting there, just like on TV in a
yeah.
van, we're listening in live, and he says, "Yeah, I know you did that murder for me, but you don't have to say anything to the police." And we're like, "We got him."
But I
And
thought
he
you need more than just a confession, right?
Well, we had the co-conspirators as well.
You already had those.
Right,
Okay.
we did a proffer, with them, and we worked out some deals with those people
Oh,
as
I
well.
don't I know you had to do that, but just what were the deals for them? The 2 guys that actually strangled her in cold blood.
So the
Like
the actual killer, there was no deal for him.
oh, okay,
His
okay.
name is Cleveland Clark. But remember, the father-in-law paid someone to have the murder done, who then subcontracted it to someone else, and then subcontracted it out to the real killer. So the real killer was tried and convicted and is doing life. The father-in-law was tried, convicted, uh, and was sentenced to life, and subsequently passed away in prison. He was an
Oh,
elderly gentleman. And then the two middlemen who we made the proffers with literally got a clean slate. We had to make a deal with the devil with them to get to what we needed. So
oh,
they
yeah.
they serve no prison time.
I mean,
And sometimes that's what you have to do.
I know, and it you think it's worth it?
100%.
You do.
I think there's cases, and this is a cold case where
Yeah,
physical evidence was missing, and these are what you do when you open these cold cases. You have to make these deals to get to the truth.
yeah.
And these two individuals we made a deal with actually testified in court and really educated the jury as to how even the money transfers, the wires to Western Union for the payment, all that they had to put together. So it would have been almost impossible for us to do that without their help.
Yeah, and do you ever speak to Sparkle's widow, or her child?
So her child was raised by her parents,
Okay.
and a wonderful young lady. She's I think she just graduated college recently in the last couple of years.
Oh,
She's doing great. She was raised by her grandparents, and she obviously doesn't remember her mother, but her mother's memory,
yeah.
uh, based on everything that she's learned of this case and who her mother was as a person, lives on. So her legacy lives on within her daughter.
I love that. And that is on Dateline or 2020 on demand or maybe both, I believe, right?
I think it was Dateline NBC. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Marshall wants to know. I actually don't know this case, but do you have any updates or insight on the Katie, I don't know how to pronounce it, Janice murder in the park in Atlanta? Sad and scary case. I am not familiar with that case.
Yeah, this case is it was a young lady that was walking her dog in Piedmont Park. Our Piedmont Park is like the equivalent of Central Park in New York.
Okay.
And she was brutally attacked and killed. Her dog was killed. She was slashed to death and stabbed multiple times. And they
Her dog was killed too?
the dog was killed as well. I think we're coming up on the anniversary of that case, to be honest with you, maybe 2 or 3 years
Oh,
ago. I know who the lead detective is. Actually, although I was retired, I came back and had some robust conversations with the detective
yeah.
about everything that he was doing,
Hmm.
and I can tell you that it was a very thorough investigation. Unfortunately, no one saw this killer leaving, running away, covered in blood. That person had to have been covered in blood or changed clothes. So right now, I don't have any updates. I know the anniversary is coming up. At first, they may have looked at her. I think it was her live-in partner, another female, completely cleared her. There's no evidence, from my understanding, that she has anything to do with this. And it appears that it really is a total stranger on stranger crime, as it seems right now. Now,
Right.
who
Okay.
knows? I'm not sure what the DNA evidence is on that, but obviously, if there was an abundance of DNA, if this person was in CODIS, we know who it was. That's not the case, unfortunately.
I mean, this seems odd. That's a very, very violent and intimate way to kill someone, especially number one, if it's at random, and number two, it's been almost 3 years. Has anything like this happened again in the area? I mean, that would indicate that somebody's on the loose.
No, and nothing nationwide. So for those people who may be listening and may or may not know what VICAP is, so VICAP is a program that the FBI runs where, and just to put it simply and plainly, let's say this case, the information is put into VICAP, and then let's just say in Jamestown, Missouri,
Mhm.
there's a case that is similar to this, and that detective then says, let me run this through VICAP. Our case would pop up and say, hey, there are some similarities to this case, meaning another person was killed, stabbed, their
Yeah.
dog was killed, or a pet
Yeah.
was with them. Some similarities. Nothing like that has popped up yet, my understanding.
I mean,
Um,
it's so odd,
it's
Vince. Like,
it's it's really a true anomaly if you think about it. And with all the cameras around Piedmont Park, I think where they determined the path that this killer took to leave,
mhm.
the cameras weren't working that day. And unfortunately, that's very common in homicide investigation. We've had homicides where at a gas pump, you look up and there's a camera pointing right where the crime
Yeah.
occurred, and of course, it wasn't working. And we're so used to that. So, but this was a case like that where there were some malfunctioning cameras. It didn't capture all the footage.
Yeah.
Um, Perfect storm for a killer, not for so much for law enforcement.
Right. And so the cameras that day just randomly decided not to work. But this killer had no idea. I mean, that's also kind of crazy if you think about that as well.
Yeah, I don't think the killer would have known anything about the cameras, and I think it was just a particular camera that he may have, when he fled the park, that camera was inoperable
Mhm.
just that particular day, or had been for a month or so. It just happened. It's just circumstance. It's really
And what
nothing
was
to
that
it.
called again that you said, the program that the FBI uses?
It's called VICAP,
Vi-
VICAP. Yeah,
And was that around when Israel Keys was committing his murder spree? Do you know? Or is
I'm
this
not
new?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. VICAP's been around. I mean, I started in homicide in the year 2000, and I believe it was VICAP was a program available to us back then, I believe. It's been
Okay.
around for a
Okay.
while.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just, yeah, thinking about that because Israel Keys committed these horrible murders, but he would bury the evidence state by state and, made it really difficult to be found. So I wasn't sure. And I'm pretty sure they used this program to find Rachel Morin's killer as well out of
Yeah.
Baltimore, right?
Well, the program only works if the detective investigating the case decides to input it into VICAP. So the
Okay.
FBI doesn't do it. So I would have to decide, hey, I ran out of leads. I just don't have anything else to go on. I'm going to submit all this information to the FBI's VICAP system and see if they can search their database and see if there's any similar cases nationwide. So if
Okay.
you don't put it in, it's only as good as what you put in it.
Absolutely. That's so interesting. Oh my gosh. Well, I wanted to also ask you here because I obviously have been, people that follow me, they know that I've been covering Keefe D and Tupac and now Diddy's alleged involvement here with the death of Tupac in 1996. I think this is going to be a really tough case here. I think the case against Keefe D is going to be super difficult. He's very upset right now because he had this proffer agreement and all of a sudden investigators put it out there and he's like, I felt like watching him in court, he's half scared shitless, right? Because they're like, Diddy this, Diddy that. And he's like, whoa, 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 now I'm a snitch. And, number two, he obviously wants to make bail. He wants to get out before and make some money, I'm thinking, before his trial. But now they think they can put him in Vegas on the night of September 7th, 1996, because his wife booked this hotel room. What are the odds here that there is camera footage from decades ago? Because now they have to search, like they know where he stayed or where his wife booked a room. And now they also know where Orlando Anderson booked a room. I mean, what do you think the odds are that they're actually going to find footage of them in Vegas that night? He wasn't on the Keefe wasn't on the MGM footage.
No, a snowball in hell would have a better chance of surviving than them finding
Really?
footage. 100%. There's no footage unless it was preserved back then. That's the only way. If someone had, and you got to think, 1996, you're talking VHS tapes. We're talking tapes.
That's literally what Gretchen said. VHS tapes.
Yeah, we're not talking digital. So that tape, even if a tape existed, and I'll give an example. So there's a service where you can send your VHS tapes to get converted to digital. So I'm digging through some boxes and I find this tape of my son when he was, I don't know, whatever, my son's first birthday party. And I sent it in and I found a couple other VHS tapes and I threw them in there to get converted. Well, some of them, they couldn't do it because they were degraded. They had just been sitting in a box. So luckily my son's birthday party, I could get digitized, but for some reason, the other two tapes, they had degraded. So even in 1996, someone pulled this VHS tape of them entering a hotel. If it exists, then you got to figure out whether this thing's even going to work. The chances of someone pulling that tape and it hasn't come to light yet is slim to none. But listen, let's remember, he's a snitch anyway. Keefe D snitched on the drug game in LA to LAPD. So he was already on the payroll. So I don't know what he's talking about. They're outing me as a snitch now. You've been a snitch the whole time.
Well, so he didn't know that though. I don't think Diddy, that was 2008, 2009. He was working for the LAPD and that was the proffer agreement. But that was, they never released any sort of confession there until now, until they put out this 179-page document. So I don't think that necessarily was known to everybody in his circle, right?
No, he would not have told anybody. But you got to remember, the proffer, a proffer is a very intricate and complicated process. The two main pieces of a proffer is whatever you're going to tell the prosecutor has to be truthful. That's number one. If you tell them something that ends up not being truthful, then you don't have immunity anymore. They can use that against you. The second piece is you got to keep your mouth shut. The problem he had was he goes out after the proffer and he starts talking about this. And he's talking about he was in Vegas. He was in the car. He passed the gun to his nephew. He starts going to. So now what you have essentially done is now created another confession, a third party confession. So that can now be used against you. So he let his ego and his personality overshadow the fact that you are really he's putting himself in a dangerous and precarious situation by telling and doing interviews and writing a memoir and putting all this. So that's what they're using. So now the prosecutors are saying, okay, we don't have to honor the proffer anymore because you violated it by speaking publicly on what you said in the proffer. And now we can use that against you. And that's why they let everybody now know he made a proffer back in 2008.
Yeah.
When he's talking about, when he's cooperating on his drug case, and let me tell you something, this is so common with criminals. It's almost like, imagine a bag, right? And inside the bag, you're going on a camping trip. There's a lantern. There's a, propane stove in there. There's a flare. You got all these things you need for camping, right? You're only going to take those out as you need them. And that's what people do in proffers. I'm going to talk about the drugs. And when they start thinking, well, they're not really buying this. Hey, you know what? I know about a murder too. Oh, let me talk about the Tupac murder. I actually was there. It was my nephew. And it's this bolstering attitude that these guys get into. And then, obviously his ego was so big, he couldn't hold it in. If he'd have just kept his mouth shut, we wouldn't even be talking about this right now.
You're so right. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out because I just kept thinking to myself, well, how were they able to break this proffer agreement? And it's because he wouldn't shut up. He literally was making money talking about this through documentaries, through his book, through all of these stupid interviews. That makes sense. Okay, I get it now.
But I do agree with you though. It's going to be a tough case because all they have is this memoir he wrote or these interviews he did, and he's basically saying the same thing that they've known all along. He
Right.
said this to law enforcement already. They
Yep.
just couldn't use it against him. So now you have to convince a jury that what he was. Now his nephew's deceased, so
Dead.
the
Yeah.
shooter, he's not going to. There's nothing you can do with
Everybody's
him.
dead in that car.
Everybody's dead. So he's
Hmm.
the only. He's the last man standing. So what is he going to say? He's like, look, I made that up. I was there, but I didn't hand him a gun. I was
Mhm.
bragging. I mean, I'm selling a memoir. I'm trying to make money. I'm
Yep.
trying to write a book. I mean, everybody, Hollywood lies about the facts all the time. That's all I'm doing. I'm following suit. That's
Yeah.
what it, so it's going to be a tough case, in my opinion, for them to really prosecute without a living, breathing witness to come in and say, I was in the car. He gave him the gun. This is the type of gun. This is what he said when he gave him the gun. None of those people exist anymore.
Yeah. I think I was under the impression here, like I should say, I know it's going to be hard to get this footage, but the fact that, we said it, 1996, there's no computer files here to see who booked what room, but somehow, Vince, they found it. They not only found Paula Clemens, Keefe D's wife, but they found Orlando Anderson. So I think at this point, there's so much pressure on them to get this conviction here that maybe they will find this footage. And if they find him, I think that will be their quote unquote, I don't want to say slam dunk nothing's a slam dunk, but that will be their bombshell evidence. Hey, we saw you, you were there. Let's match your testimony for the last decade or so. Yeah, you
Well,
did it.
I don't think there's any dispute. I don't think he's even disputing that he was in Vegas.
No,
I
he is.
mean,
He's saying you guys don't have the evidence to prove I was there. That's what they're saying. Like, prove I was there. Go ahead.
right.
So
Well, that's a good point. But the fact that if there's a videotape from 1996, I would be completely shocked.
I know, I know. Yeah. And it's funny because Gretchen, I pinned this before, but you said maybe Diddy also paid security off. I don't know about that only because Diddy had said he called after Tupac was shot and killed. He called Keefe D and he's like, yo, man, was that us? Like, was that the Southside Crips? And Keefe D's like, yo, man. I don't know. Keefe D just seems like such a fucking idiot to me, excuse my language, that it is hard for me to believe that he masterminded this whole thing on his own. I just feel like, you know, Diddy, he's not a suspect, not a suspect, but I do feel like he had way more of a motive and he had way more power, I guess, at that point, even though Keefe D did I think he was the head of the Crips at that point. But I'm anxious. I want him
So
to go
if
down
if,
for
you,
this.
if I had to dissect this from like my years of working homicides and
Yeah.
investigating cases, what makes more sense is what we think the motive was. There's a fight at the MGM Grand. Keefe D's nephew gets basically his ass beat down by
Yep.
Tupac and his crew. And
Hmm.
this happens all the time. Like we've had cases here in every city, New York City, LAPD have had cases just like this. There's a fight, there's an altercation. They leave in a car, the next car, everybody gets in another car, they pull up and they start shooting. Happens all the time. As far as motive goes, and that sudden anger, that frustration and that rage that happens when someone gets beat like that,
Yeah.
that happens. That makes more sense than a coordinated hit from Diddy, paying Keefe D to do this. Not to say that that conversation didn't happen, but I think in the spur of the moment
Yeah.
when this fight occurred, they were like, there they go. They're leaving right now. Let's mount up. Boom. Now, did he pass him the gun? Who knows? Like, we may never know. He's probably going to say he made that up, that he passed his nephew the weapon. If he
Yeah.
indeed, if he indeed did pass that weapon to his nephew, and the prosecution can prove that, then that's in Georgia. It's called party to a crime. Other states, it's called aiding and abetting. If you encourage or provide encouragement or assistance in committing that felony,
Yeah.
you're basically guilty of murder. So if they can prove that he aided, abetted, encouraged his nephew to shoot,
Yeah.
then they have a case.
That's going to be tough too, because there's been stories that Terrence Brown was actually the shooter because Orlando didn't have the right angle. So yeah, that's going to be tough. And I know you have to go in like 1 minute, but you're right about that. I think that two things can be true at the same time. Diddy probably said that in a room. I would give anything for their heads. And KBD's like, oh yeah, I can arrange that. He probably didn't know when or where he was going to arrange it. And you're right, the opportunity presented itself in Vegas that night. I agree
Right.
with that. I want to put this up before you have to run. Vince's
Okay.
background and ink are A plus. Yeah, they really
Thank
are.
you. I love it. Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
no,
that.
really. And does anyone else have any questions before we have to let Vince go? Again, TV1, you can watch his show, Deadly Case Files. You can follow him. His Instagram and TikTok are really wonderful. It's just at Vince Velasquez for all of your handles, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah, but he has a lot of great tips on just like, how to get yourself out of a situation if, you're held at gunpoint or, whatever. They're really, really interesting. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. Yes, it was super nice to have Vince here. Really, Vince, thank you. Tommy, yeah, we do need more of Vince. So you have to come back and talk to
I
me, okay?
will. I will definitely come back. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
It's
All
been my
right.
pleasure.
Thank you so much,
All
Vince.
right. Bye,
Talk to
everyone.
you later. Bye.